I used to think the worst sound in our marriage was the slam of the front door when my husband, Mark, came home angry. But I was wrong. The worst sound was quiet or almost tender. It was the way he'd say, "You'll never leave me, Claire," with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Like a promise. Like a warning. For years I convinced myself it was just a phrase. A careless string of words from a man who worked too much and loved too little. But the longer I stayed, the more I realized he believed it. Truly believed it. As if I belonged to him in a way that made leaving impossible. The truth settled against my skin like cold fog the night he took my debit card to check something. He didn't ask. He didn't return it. He just placed it on the highest shelf the next morning and said, "You don't need to worry about money. I handle everything." I remember staring at that shelf, feeling something inside me tilt, shift, break. At first, I tried to reason with him. But reason was a door he closed long ago. Every attempt to talk about finances was met with stone-cold silence or a smirk. Eventually, I learned to stop asking. But one night, after he'd fallen asleep on the couch with the TV still murmuring, I caught a glimpse of myself reflected in the dark window. I looked like a ghost in my own home, a woman waiting for permission to exist. And that was when the thought first formed a tiny pulse of rebellion. What if I didn't ask anymore? The next morning, I walked to the bank during my lunch break. My hands trembled as I filled out the paperwork. The pen felt heavier than it should have. Opening an account felt like opening a door I wasn't sure I was allowed to touch. When the banker handed me the folder, with my name on it, my name only, I felt oxygen flood my body in a way I hadn't realized. I was starving for weeks. I transferred small amounts. Nothing he'd notice right away. A few dollars here, a small refund there. Freelance work he didn't know about. Quiet money. Quiet hope. And then, he found out. It was a Saturday morning. The type that usually smelled like burnt toast because he insisted he was helping with breakfast. Instead, he stood in the kitchen holding my bank statement in both hands. His jaw was tight, but his voice was almost gentle. "Claire," he said, "why would you hide this from me?" My pulse hammered so loud I barely heard myself answer. "Because I needed something of my own," he laughed. Not amused, disbelieving. "You don't need anything of your own. We're married. Everything is shared, everything except the freedom he took so easily." For a moment, I wondered whether I'd misjudged him, whether he might surprise me and understand. But then his expression changed, subtle, chilling. "You've been planning something," he said softly. "Haven't you?" I didn't answer. Silence was safer. His next words were nearly whispered. "You know you'll never leave." Maybe he meant it as reassurance. Maybe as a threat. But in that moment, something unexpected unfurled inside me, not fear, but clarity. He genuinely believed he owned every decision I could ever make. And that belief had been holding me hostage for years. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I simply lowered my eyes and let him think he frightened me back into place. He crumpled the paper, tossed it onto the table, and walked away with the slow confidence of a man convinced the world bent for him. But while he believed he'd won, I realized something else. I wasn't afraid anymore. Over the next few days, he watched me with suspicion, as if waiting for me to protest or plead. But I stayed quiet, moved carefully, observed him the way someone studies a shifting weather before a storm. What he didn't know was that I had already transferred the last of the money. I had already spoken to a lawyer. I had already arranged a place to stay. I had already told the bank to freeze the account the moment I walked in with the code phrase. My revenge wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. It was preparation disguised as surrender. One evening, he left his laptop open on the dining table, still logged into his email, not because he trusted me, but because he was too arrogant to imagine I'd ever look. I wasn't planning to invade his privacy, but something in bold text caught my eye. A forwarded message from his coworker, the subject line, about Claire's access. My heart palmed itself in cold hands as I read his quiet attempts to remove my name from accounts, redirect bills, reroute statements. He'd been planning his own escape, one that didn't involve me having a financial foothold anywhere. He wasn't just controlling. He was preparing to erase me. Finding the email didn't break me. It freed me. I printed it, folded it neatly, slipped it into my bag like a final piece of armor. The next morning, I walked into the bank calm, steady, almost serene. When the teller greeted me, I whispered the code phrase. She nodded once, understanding everything. As I walked back out into the sunlight, my phone buzzed. It was Mark, a single message. "Where are you? We need to talk." I didn't answer. I didn't owe him another conversation. By the time he realized I was gone, the account was secured, the lawyer had filed the papers, and every financial doorway he tried to close on me had been pried open by the evidence. He accidentally handed me. My revenge wasn't in destroying him. It was in reclaiming the pieces of myself he thought I'd never notice were missing. He once told me, "You'll never leave." He was wrong. And the freedom that settled over me afterward felt like stepping into warm sunlight. After years of winter. If you want to hear more stories like this, stay close. There's always another truth waiting.